Thanks. Happy to be here. First, I have to apologize for my footwear. I'm wearing these clogs, not because I went into politics and became member of parliament for Venstre, but because I actually broke 2 toes a week ago. And if you want to know how you do it, you don't have to go that far from this place. There's a place called Ahlers, very close to here, where they have a lot of trampolines. You go there with your kids, and you try to prove to your kids that you are still 20 years old, even though you're not. And then that way you can break 2 toes at the same time, very symmetrically, actually. So if someone here can help me 3D print, 2 bones, 2 toes, then would be very happy. So unlike the previous speaker, that extremely interesting. I don't have the very specific details around this industry, around production, around how to do additive manufacturing. But what I've done through building 3 startups myself and investing in another 20 startups and now going to politics is I have a view on how you make massive changes. And that's exactly what you're trying to do in the various industries where you're using this methodology and this technique. And I'll try to share some of my thoughts on that with you, and at the same time add on how do I bring that into politics, and what's the role of a policymaker in this regard. So the first thing, I basically have 2 main points around making changes. One is be willing to fail, and fail often, and the other one is be willing to think big. The first one around being willing to fail often is the resilience. It's the I know that I can only make changes if I'm willing to try a lot of things, and often I'll fail big. I've told all my friends that I can make all these changes, that what I'm doing right now will change the entire industry, and a year after I'm meeting them and I haven't changed a dime. Not a dime. But I still try and I try and I try. And that's what you see here, these 2 birds. They know that the only way that they can ever make changes in this and do new things in this picture, learn how to fly, is by trying, even though it looks silly. It looks very, very silly. But they don't care because they are birds. But we're humans, so we care a lot about that it looks silly. And we're very worried about vanity. Especially, I think, the Danes, actually. Very worried about that we want to be member of the club of the successful people. And that club, you announce something, and then you better do it, because next time you meet up at a family gathering, alumni party, or you meet up with your colleagues in the quarterly business review, you want to tell them, I told you all this last time, and I did it. You don't want to show up and say, I learned a lot since last time, but I've been fired and I didn't get my bonus. But that's how we actually, that should be the methodology we start using around this, that we don't care about that it looks stupid, because we know that the only way to do something new, to make changes, is that we dare to put a big statement out there, and then we do all these things to learn a lot and end up learning how to fly. Another way to look at this is actually looking at classical music. These are all kinds of composers plotted into this grid. With on the x-axis you have number of compositions, on the y-axis you have greatness. A bit of a subjective scale on how great these composers became. And you see there is a clear correlation. You also see that there are some outliers there. It's Beethoven, Bach and Mozart. So what you can tell from this is they did a lot of shit, but yet we see them as very great today. And that's also how to think about this, that you do a lot of things, and not everything you do is seen as, wow, you're so brilliant. But if you keep on doing it, you end up being great. A more recent example of exactly the same is Angry Birds. They did 54 game titles before they did Angry Birds. So Angry Birds is not a company. The company is called Rovio. They want to do games, and they keep on trying and trying and trying. And these guys up in Helsinki that did Angry Birds, they didn't stop after 25 times, right? You have not played these 54 games before Angry Birds. They didn't quit. They didn't quit after 35 times or 42 times and said, guys, I think, it's not for us to build this. Let's leave this for someone else. No, they kept on trying. And because they kept on trying, they learned so much, so they ended up being able to build such a brilliant franchise, such a brilliant game as Angry Birds, where some birds are killing pigs. They learned that from failing 54 times. Maybe not failing, but didn't work as successful as this one. And the beauty of this is that, and I guess you know this, you have this dream about changing entire industries, about one day I can print a car. But you know that if you go back to your startup or your business right now, you're not there yet, but yet you have the guts to go out and tell your investors or your board or at a conference like this, one day we'll do this. But you know when you go back, this is where you are at right now. This rocket can go like 5 meters up the air. But yet you are able to tell them that one day will be Falcon X and we can do a lift up into space. And that ambiguity is also very important when you want to make big changes, that you are completely comfortable with ambiguity, that you don't know exactly how you're going to get there, but you have an idea that it's possible, and you keep on knocking on it, and you keep on trying, and you fail, and you still believe in it. So that's the first point, believe in it, keep on trying. The next point that I learned the hard way, and this is not directly reference to my life in politics now, but what I learned with my first startup that failed after 9 months was it failed because I didn't have a vision. I didn't have something big I wanted to do with it. So when I failed with the first attempt on making a product, I didn't have a framework for within I could then say now we have to go over here instead. So when the first version of my product failed, the entire company failed because there wasn't a big vision, there was only a specific product idea. So it's very important to be able to put out that big vision and dare to put out a big vision. And one of the best visions we have that has actually coined the entire term around moonshot thinking is the speech at Rice University from John F. Kennedy in 1962. And I just want to hear this piece.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skill.
It's so beautiful. How many of you have the goosebumps now, right? That's what you feel when you see this speech. And especially the part that goes about not because it's easy, but because it's hard, but we still dare to do it, and that serves to measure our skills. A framework that some of you might know to put these big visions into place, both in startups and in existing organizations, is this BHAG. So big, hairy, audacious goal. Yet you dare to put out a goal there that is measurable, that is very hairy, so you don't know exactly how to go there, but you know exactly if you do this, you have made it. And some examples of these big goals come from these quite well-known companies. Ford was to democratize the automobile, not the mobile. Walmart, Amazon, they went further on from that one. I love the one from Nike, right? Crush Adidas. It's completely okay to crush someone else and that being your big vision. I'm in politics, so I know exactly that that's possible, to have that as a big vision. We meet in every day and say, crush. I'll not say that. But then also be inspired by others and have that as your big vision. This one from Stanford. Today we know Stanford, of course, they're up there with Berkeley and with Harvard. But when they started, and formulated this in 1940, they wanted to become the Harvard of the West. And when you then look at this, put this big vision out there, you also dare to put a big vision out there because you believe that even though your starting point is a weak one, then you are able to actually disrupt an entire industry. It comes from the very definition of a disruption, where someone with less resources, a smaller company, have the ability to challenge an incumbent and make big changes. And when we then think about this disruption, and here comes the third point in my speech here, it's about how we actually go about making these big changes and how we get everyone along. Because I guess when most of you and also myself look at disruption, the ability of using new technology to make significant changes, we see this. We see a wealth of new opportunities there. I can sit in the back seat of my car while my Tesla is driving itself, right? That's illegal, but I could do it. So I see a lot of opportunities. But we just have to remember that there's a lot of people out there that see this instead. They see, they fear the future. They see an empty factory hall because we don't need to do things the same way anymore. And then they react and maybe do something like this, vote for Donald Trump, vote for Boris Johnson, someone that have a very simple solution for a very complex world, and talks into fear of the future. And fear of technology is also fear of the future. So I believe now that, me being in politics, some of you guys being involved in big associations, also the whole initiative with the AM Hub, is to make sure to communicate to everyone, not only in our entire industries, in our eco chambers, but to everyone, that no one is getting left behind. That we'll make sure that this technology will benefit society and thereby benefit everyone. That's one point. And the other point is that this technology and society actually enable people to, or us to create winners. That there's a new piece of technology, could be AM, could be artificial intelligence, could be robots. And that actually we have a society where it's possible to use that technology to create new winners. New winners being an existing company that suddenly gets a competitive advantage. New winners being a new startups. And the communication, I can do that a bit, but you play a big role in that. In terms of making sure that society can create winners, I can do a lot, and you then need to do it. I can make sure you have access to talent. I can make sure that you have access to capital. I can try to change the culture. But you need to then want it to go out and create big winners based on a new technology. And we then look at this, then the storytelling becomes very, very important. What is the story to everyone that does not necessarily understand the basic of the technology? And there we're very fortunate in Denmark that we actually have unions that are willing to go out and tell the story. We have a union like Dansk Metal. They go out and they do a robot strategy. Where you could say, traditional thinking would be, no, that's scary, because that might put our members out of employment. No, they say, we believe that if Danish companies are better at using robot technologies in their production, our members will actually get more to do and will have better jobs, because the dirty and dangerous work is now left over to robots. That's the methodology to this. So we have a very good starting point here in Denmark, because we have the Danish model in terms of how the participant in the workforce, they act on these things. And we can all see that if we look at the Danes, they're actually quite positive about the future. Overall, I have confidence in the future. Then the Danes are quite higher than the EU 28, and also globalization offers possibilities for economic growth, also quite much higher than the EU 28. And then we need to share, what does the data, what does the research show around this, around, for instance, automation? It shows that it's a possibility for growth, not a possibility, not a dangerous technology that will put people out of job and put the economy into misery. So the story around when a Danish company in Hjørring produces a robot that can then mark the football fields instead of the old guy called Arne walking around on the football field with his clocks, right? Then there's something new to do for Arne. He will have a more interesting job because he doesn't have to do this job anymore, and it creates economic growth for society and creates hundreds of jobs in Hjørring when this company becomes successful. So in short, to you and to Denmark, be hungry, stay curious, love your failures, and shoot for the moon. Thank you.
Thanks. Tommy, thank you very much. That was excellent. I want to open up immediately to the floor. There's a special guest here. Does anybody have any questions for Tommy while we have him on stage? I can lead in with one of mine, first of all, while you guys gather yourselves after that talk. One of the things you talked about was the changing of jobs. I think it was, the last industrial revolution. I think it's quite a well-known fact that the only job that was actually lost entirely was a job called a lift operator or an elevator operator. Everything else is becoming, what we're talking about is augmented jobs. Jobs that are changed or added to in some way by the use of these sorts of technologies. Is that something you agree with, rather than actually this fearful idea that things will be replaced rather than augmented? Yeah, we can see that in the way, if you look at Danish production companies, then if you look at the Danish
I think they're called, what are they called in English? Erhvervsakademier. That have this technical education. Then they start, educating, people with process technology, right? They don't sit at the actual factory belt, but they're responsible one step further behind. So we see that in a lot of cases, because we don't have, in Denmark, it's also, we have created this robot adventure in Fyn, here in Denmark. And one of the reasons we could create these these collaborative robots, that's because we have a methodology or value in the way we treat people, is that we actually trust in people. So we trust them to actually operate things and be responsible for technology. And that enabled a Danish company with these values then go out and create robots that work together with humans and not work in these light-off factory that were the old dream of the robot revolution, especially in Japan, where they hope that they don't need workers anymore at all. They could just literally turn the light off because there's only machines in there. And then we have a different approach here in Denmark. And I believe that also should give us confidence that this is not about completely taking people out of it. It's just changing roles. And we see that in the education system right now.
That touches on a point I wanted to ask again for my next question, was with such fast-moving technology, certainly in the UK, certainly in the US, the United States, the problem is actually the pace of change outpaces regulatory or legislative maneuvers. For example, the autonomous vehicle industry has been ready for quite some years now, but it's the legislative and the regulatory issues that are actually holding this sort of technology back. Is this something that you find here? How can we combat this?
Yes, we definitely see it here. But if we take an example, because suddenly I could definitely blame the lawmakers before, right? It's a bit difficult to do now because I'm one of them. But when you think about it, I definitely believe we talk about autonomous drive, that the technology is ready before people are ready, right? Just look at an airplane. Would you be confident going to an airplane and say we don't have any pilots? We know it's very doable for the airplane to fly itself from London to Copenhagen when you had to go here for this conference. But you'd rather have a pilot out there, just in case, right? Yeah. That's the same thing we have at autonomous drive. Wouldn't be comfortable. So I don't know whether it's the lawmakers, because remember the lawmaking, it's based on democracies, right? So we take a mandate from you guys, and if you're not ready to do it, then you don't want to vote for us if we say, tomorrow we'll just allow autonomous drive in all streets of Denmark. If I went out and said that, I don't know if I'll get the same amount of votes, right? There would be some people very optimistic on the future would say, yes, finally a guy that, understands it. But many of you would be, are we sure about that? Just need a bit more time, right? So it's also to make sure that, regulatory is slow, but sometimes also slow because changing, cultures and people also takes time. But having said that, I definitely think that we need to change some of the areas, maybe not in how fast we make laws, but the way we make them, so they can be more open to advancing technology and we don't have to go back and change it all the time. Haven't found the recipe for that yet, but we have that when it comes to production, when it comes to artificial intelligence. We have a lot of areas where we just need to think differently around how we do legislation itself.
Excellent. Has anybody got any questions for Tommy while we have him on stage? Yes, sir.
It's Vidar from Cloud Maps. I broke a toe this summer. And I went to the health service, and we spent a lot of time and resources. And the final advice was to take it easy for 3 months and buy some clothes. But I think that maybe the solution could be to 3D print some kind of exoskeleton for the toe and support it instead of buying clothes.
Okay, thanks. I'll try that. It was a specific advice. I don't think it was a question. Can you print toast today? Okay.
Fair enough, okay. Last chance, last opportunity. Does anybody have another question for Tommy? Otherwise, I will release him from his duties and we'll carry on with the programme. Okay, thanks very much, Tommy. Appreciate it. Thank you.